You're listening to The Western Rookie, a hunting podcast full of tips, tricks, and strategies from seasoned Western hunters. There are plenty of opportunities out there. We just need to learn how to take on the challenges.
Hunting is completely different up there.
I've harvested 26 big game animals.
You can fool their eyes, but you can't fool their nose.
300 yards back to the road turned into 3 miles back the other way.
It's always cool seeing new hunters go and harvest an animal.
I don't know what to expect.
If there's anybody I want in the woods with me, it'll be you.
Welcome back to another Western Rookie podcast brought to you by GOHUNT. Today, I have got Reece Anderson, good friend of the pod, back on the podcast, and we're going to be talking some taxidermy stuff. Obviously, Reece is our, I feel like you're the resident taxidermist for the podcast. Anytime there's a podcast question, I just be like, hey, Reece, how's this work? What do you do here? We should do a podcast about this. And then you get on and we have a good time. So welcome back for the, fourth or fifth time?
Thanks for having me.
It's been good. It's been good. So seasons are kicking off. We're recording this. I think North Dakota's been open for about a week now.
Yeah, exactly a week now.
Yeah, almost two. Minnesota's going to be open up here soon, and then after that, pretty much everything's open. And we're thinking about doing a podcast on like what people can do to take better care of their trophies or their game. Not that we're trophy hunting, but whatever you want to do to preserve that memory. Right? It usually involves taxidermy.
Exactly.
And you've already this season, it sounds like, had a couple of like swing and a misses show up at the shop.
Yep, I've had a couple of pretty ugly capes roll in.
Yeah. So good time to kind of do just a refresher course on the things to do and probably most importantly, the things not to do if you're thinking about doing a shoulder mount or anything involving a cape. Really is where we'll talk about some other stuff. We'll talk about velvet. We'll talk about like the things you can get away with if you just want to do a Euro mount or a horn mount. But specifically for doing shoulder mounts or full bodies would be another level up from that on like what to do, what not to do. Because it's hopefully everyone on the listening to the podcast has to make that decision this fall. They shoot a monster and now they got to figure out how to cape it. That's what we're hoping for everyone.
Exactly. And I understand caping in the field is not the easiest thing. I've done it. You're working with unlevel ground and elements. It could be super cold and you just want to get back to the truck.
Yeah.
But I still tell people, take your time. Holes aren't that big of a deal depending on where they're at and the time of year.
Yeah.
Early season stuff, try not to put holes in them. Trying to hide those on short-haired capes are pretty tough. But as the season progresses and like the deer and elk are getting their longer winter coats, you can get away with a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah, every buck I've ever shoulder mounted has been like a November buck. And those are like, we had one actually that it looks like he ran into a far barbed wire fence because he's got a line right across his throat, whereas he's missing some fur. Yeah, and I was like, oh, that looks great.
Or they got, I've done a few. They just got some nasty scars on them from fighting.
Yeah, and those are unavoidable. Like that's the deer. That's the character.
I have a bull
of the
elk
buck
in the shop actually right now that I mounted for myself. He's got a scar. It's on his neck behind his ear, and it goes all the way down his neck, like from fighting, or I don't know if it was a cat. Yeah, it was. That scar is 10, 12 inches long.
That's crazy. Speaking of bull elk, I just put the bull elk we got from you up. I had to build like a temporary pedestal.
Oh, a temporary pedestal?
Yeah. It's been up for, I don't know. We picked that up earlier this spring. I think I was on the
April.
Yeah. It was probably on the floor for like a month while I was busy doing other stuff and then built a quick pedestal. So now I have both bulls on either side of the fireplace.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
They need a third one in the middle.
On the
Right
fireplace, you mean?
Yep, right above the fireplace.
Yeah, that'll be Abby's. We'll have to get Abby a bowl, and she can put hers up on the fireplace. But that was a bull that I caped out. How did that work?
That was a Colorado bull, wasn't it?
It was Colorado. I believe I caped it out myself. I can't remember. Yeah, I think I did. 1 second, I gotta sneeze. It's allergy season for me here in
No
Minnesota,
kidding.
so anyone that listens to the podcast hears some unexpected silences. It's because I'm saving you from listening to me sneeze. So
That's how it is here too.
yeah, but I remember caping that bull out myself in Colorado the day after I shot it, and it's not fun. Like, I will be the first to admit, I like to do things myself, but caping animals, I'm like, this is why I pay taxidermists. Like, I'm not doing this anymore unless I have to. Colorado, I had to because of the CWD transport laws. I had to get all the brain tissue out of the skull cap, and so the only great way to do it is to skull cap them and peel the membrane off.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that law got bypassed though in Minnesota last year or this year.
Oh, so I could have brought one back this year. And
This year, yes.
Yeah.
I believe so.
Yeah, they need to figure out a way to go, like, if you go from point of kill directly to taxidermist and, like, have taxidermists set up or certified or whatever it is to be able to handle that and dispose of it the right way, they got to find a way to figure that out, because it's probably better for a taxidermist to take that animal and do what they need to do and then dispose of everything in the safest manner versus, like, me on the side of the public caping it out and just pucking the brain tissue into the weeds. Like, now that's going to sit there the whole time. You know what I mean? Like it.
Oh, definitely.
So yeah, I think there should be something better, like just regional, like disposition boxes or whatever, where they're just going to go put it in an incinerator and like nothing's going to survive.
In North Dakota, we had test sites where you could drop off the head.
Yeah.
And the game fish would go around and pick them up, and then they'd test them for CWD. I don't know how that worked with like the whole taxidermy side though, so I'm pretty sure you put the whole head in there.
Yeah, well, when I shot my North Dakota bull, the local game warden was like, "Hey, I need your elk," and I'm like, "You're not getting it. I'm giving it to the taxidermist." He's like, "Well, can you give me the skull?" And he's like, I think it was at the time, like, if you don't submit your elk skull, you lose your hunting privileges for a year.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I'll cape it then. But then that put me in a bad position where I had to cape my own, and it's a once-in-a-lifetime trophy, so I could give him the skull. Like, I wasn't really a fan of how that all was set up. And luckily, he drove to my house. I'm like, I'm going to put it in the driveway. Like, I'm not driving to Jamestown to give you this to you. He's like, no, that's fine. I'll come get it.
I've had a few game wardens come in and test stuff.
Yeah.
All my cats, they have to come and pick up the carcass.
Yeah.
I can't dispose of a cat.
Yeah, and I think they were age testing elk and doing other stuff too. Which I was like,
teeth and stuff.
Yeah, I like the level of quality they take at watching the herd in North Dakota, because it's a pretty good herd. I was just like, it kind of puts me in a pinch for trying to get my hide to the taxidermist, and get the hide, because I would rather have had a taxidermist cape that bull. It was the first time I've ever caped anything off the face. It's the biggest animal I've ever shot. I did not enjoy it. It took me like 5 hours to do that in my garage. And so, it's not that fun. And since then, I've kind of learned a couple things, but I still don't do it unless I have to. Like 10 miles back, I want to save some weight packing out, or in a CWD zone where I'm not supposed to bring the brain home. But I feel like more and more with CWD laws, everyone's going to kind of eventually find themselves in that position where they're caping out like a full cape. Everyone does like half capes, right? Where you cape the neck and shoulders and then cut the neck off and bring the whole head and cape in. And we should talk about that too, because I'm sure a lot of people mess that up.
And that's how most of my deer come in, actually.
Yeah. Because no one wants to do that. The eyes, the nose, the ears, going around the antlers.
Most people save that for me.
Yeah, I would. That's why I hire you. That's why would I try to do your job? you're not going to come into the office on Monday morning and do my job for me.
No.
So, I would rather have someone better for it, better at it. You do dozens and dozens and dozens a year versus I do one every 5 years.
Yeah.
Who's going to do a better job?
Yeah, I think I've only had 1 or 2 deer come in that were fully caped.
Yeah.
And
Were they
those
out of state?
They were Canada whitetails.
Yeah, so
And
probably.
they came from an outfitter. The outfitter caped them out,
Yeah.
put it in the trash bag.
So when it comes to shooting, let's start with the average. Like you're gonna shoot your buck, and you've probably got a local taxidermist that you've worked with before that you're gonna bring your animal to, right? But you're
Yeah.
also gonna gather the meat first. You may be gonna field dress it. So let's go through both, like a Western gutless method, and like a traditional, shoot them at the farm, gut it out, hang it from the tractor, butcher it, and then take the hide in. Like, because there's 2 different kind of styles that you cut the hide.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah. So let's go traditional first. Like, so you shoot your whitetail, back 80, you're gonna gut it, put it in the Ranger, bring it back to the farm, hang it up, right? So you've got it hanging and gutted at this point. Like, as far as the meat goes, we've covered that in other podcasts. People already have their own system, but from like the taxidermy point of view, what would you be like advising for someone that's going to be caping or like taking the hide off of their animal, from the back legs all the way down? Like, what should we be doing?
So I tell people mostly view that cape as you would the meat as well. Like, you're
Yeah.
not going to let it sit for a week before you butcher it. Like,
Right.
get it off, get it cool, just like you would your meat. View it just as the meat as well.
Yeah.
Basically, I tell people I want half the body on shoulder mount.
So
That
like
gets-
belly button.
Yeah, right behind the ribs, right around there.
Yeah. Okay.
That gives me plenty of cape, so I'm not overstretching, or it also gives the client more options on what he or she can do with that trophy. Like if I do a wall pedestal deer, I need more cape than just
Yeah.
a typical shoulder mount.
So you're saving it. I've always kind of saved it to where the ribs come together in the front. Like I won't, like if I'm gonna shoulder mount a deer, I won't cut any farther than that, and that's like 6 to 8 inches behind the front
The shoulder.
usually.
Yep, and I tell people just a little bit further. That gives me just plenty, and it's just
Yeah.
it's just a good guideline. Like the person can easily look at the deer and be like, "Oh, this is half." And
Yeah.
wrap it on.
We used to, our taxidermist told us like, hey, you guys gotta stop doing this. But what we used to do is we just cape the entire deer from like the Achilles tendon and never get close to the fur, and we just roll the whole thing up and bring it to the taxidermist. Like, you guys are
Oh,
giving me
the
way
entire-
too much. Yeah,
The entire cape. Yeah, I get a few guys that do that. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah, I think he was just like, he's kind of older and he doesn't really want to work more. Like, he's trying to
Yeah.
make things easier on himself. And he's like, I quit doing fish, quit doing birds. Like, I'm not doing elk anymore. I'm just doing deer. And he's like, you guys give me way too much. I think he's just like, yeah, it's annoying. It's heavy. Like, I don't want to carry it. You know what I mean? I think that's the point. Okay, so where the ribs start halfway, like that's from there forward, like you got to be precious, treat that fur like meat and take care of it.
Correct.
So would someone do like a round at that point and like cut basically, all the way around the deer as soon as where the ribs start?
That's what I tell people is just cut a circle
Yeah.
right around the deer. Start at the spine, go down to the belly, and then just connect it.
Yeah, and if they've gutted it, there's already going to be like a lateral cut.
Correct.
So don't cut, if we're gutting deer, I suppose that's something good to bring up. A lot of times people used to gut and then bone saw through the ribs and like all the way up into the throat because they're like, we got to take the windpipe out. I don't know where that came from.
I have no clue either, and I was cape prepping a deer last week, and I mean, it was cut all the way through the brisket. And yeah, that's a big no-no there.
Have you ever seen, like, there's guys in our group that used to do that and say, like, oh, you got to get the windpipe out. And me, my brother, my dad, his kids, we've probably shot dozens of whitetails since then, and we haven't taken the windpipe out of a single one of them, and we've never noticed an issue.
Yeah,
For, like, meat quality.
I think that's like an old like farmer's tale. Same with like slitting the throat because you got to like bleed
Yeah, bleed them.
deer out. It's like the deer's already dead.
Yeah, it's not going to circulate anymore.
No.
You bleed chickens when they're alive.
Yeah, and that's another don't do. Like, don't slit that throat.
Yeah, so don't, and that's what I kind of meant, like, if you want a shoulder mounted buck, do not bone saw through the rib cage all the way up into the throat, because then that hide is unusable, right? Like, you'll be buying a hide.
Pretty much. I do fix them if I can, depending on how bad that cut is.
Yeah.
The one I just fixed, that was borderline. If I should have fixed or if we should have just used a different cape.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to stay out of that. You don't want to cut that brisket. Stay out of the armpits.
Yeah.
Having the right tool for the job can make all the difference in the world, and that applies for Western hunts too, especially if you're coming from the Midwest like myself, because if you don't have it, there's no going home to get it. And that's why many of us Western hunters are also gear junkies, and the same is true for the folks over at GOHUNT. They have built the GOHUNT gear shop to be jam-packed full of the best, highest quality gear needed for your Western hunt. They try out everything that gets into the shop, and if they don't like it or they don't use it, it doesn't make the cut. So if you need something for your next trip, GOHUNT has something for you in the gear shop. They've got everything from optics, gear, camping accessories, apparel, footwear. They've got packs, and they've got some of the best brands in the industry. So if you're in the market for some new gear, consider checking out the GOHUNT Gear Shop. They're an avid supporter of the outdoors. They are supporters of this podcast, and most importantly, they're supporters of you. They want to help you be more successful in the West, so there's no better place to shop for gear, information, and knowledge than GOHUNT. And if you use the code WESTERN when you check out, you're going to get 10% off most of the regular priced items in the shop. So head over to GOHUNT.com, get the gear you need, use the code WESTERN, and get the right tool for the job this fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, stop cutting your gut. Like when you're gutting your deer, stop a little bit earlier. It's going to be a little bit trickier to gut. I mean, just like expect it to not be quite as easy. You're going to have to reach your hand in a little bit farther blind to grab
Basically,
everything.
when your knife hits that cartilage at the bottom of the rib cage there, just don't try to go any further.
Yeah, and then still back up a little bit to do your round and give a little bit more hide. But, yeah, so that's a good point. So now you got it hanging. You've done your round. Like, how do people easily get the hide off from there? Are they doing do you recommend people doing a spine cut and a 7 cut or no?
So what I tell people, and I've been messing around with I assume you're referring to like the back cut.
Yeah. So like it can be very hard to, if you just round it and you don't make any lateral cuts up to the antlers, it's hard to like keep getting it to roll down, and it can be very hard to get the front legs out and clear,
Yep. Yeah, so I tell people is on a deer, there's a line on it, like a line that we use. It's a hair pattern. It's right where the brown meets the white of the underside of the leg.
Yeah.
If you follow that line, it'll put you right beside the armpit, and you can connect that line to your round cut, like perfectly. And then
on that would be 2 different cuts then, or do you like Y from each armpit down to make a single line out the very bottom of the belly and go back to your lateral cut?
I just make I wish I had a deer here. Deer's hanging down.
Yeah.
Grab that leg. Just follow that hair pattern where the brown meets the white,
Yep.
and you'll just go right beside the armpit. You won't go into the armpit.
Yeah. Underneath the armpit you're talking about, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then if you just keep going straight, it'll connect to that round cut.
So you still follow the white and the brown line like down the side of their ribs to connect to your lateral, and then you do the same thing on the other side.
Correct.
Okay. So if you need to, for like a pedestal mount, you'll just sew that line back together, but it's down on the bottom and you can hide it.
Yeah, that's a simple, that's super easy. And actually, most, like my antelope, unless you do an extended leg mount,
Yeah.
you won't have to actually sew that.
Yeah.
Because it'll just pull right over. My North Dakota antelope's an extended leg, so I have the leg all the way to the knee joint. So I had to sew that line.
Yeah. Yeah,
And-
cut it off at the knee, cut the bone, like throw the lower leg away, make that line. So then that comes off easy. Can people also do, so our taxidermist has always said, if you need to do a cut, go from the lateral line on a spine and go, get your knife, poke a hole, put your knife in and cut out and cut with the grain of the fur. So cut from the ears towards the tail, from the underside. And if you want to go right down that spine, instead of cutting around the front shoulders, that's fine too. And then you can peel it off and push those legs up and through. Does that work as well?
Yeah, that would work as well, because then I can just make that, like, no matter what, I'm gonna have to make that cut on the legs.
Okay.
But yeah, if it does make it easier to cape out while it's hanging, yeah, just go back of the head, kind of right in between the ears where the spine meets the back of the head, and poke your knife in and just follow the grain of the hair.
Yeah.
Right down the spine, and you'll open that deer straight open.
Okay. So you get that part. You get the hide off. You're gonna cape down the neck as far as possible, and then basically take a sawzall or something and cut right. Just meat. Don't cut any fur. Make sure that you don't cut through the fur.
Yeah, make sure all your hide's out of the way.
Okay. And then at that point, that's when most people are probably going to drop it off at your place, right? They're going to have the head intact, which works. But if you're in a situation where it's going to be a few days before you get home, you can't get it on ice, there's CWD laws, whatever it is, and you're in a position where you have to cape off the head, what does that look like? Walk us through that process, kind of high level, start to finish, in like the kind of maybe the dangers, like what to look out for along the way.
Gotcha. Yeah. So when I do my heads, I always start with the mouth and the lips. So I'll flip that head so the mouth's looking straight up in the air.
Okay.
I'll open those lips up and I'll just cut, like, it's kind of hard to explain, but
inside the gum line. Like you're cutting the gum line. Yeah.
Yep, and you'll just start peeling that back. And I peel that back till I get past the nose, and that's just all cartilage.
Yeah.
So I'll actually peel that back, and you'll actually get to like the corner of the mouth.
Yep.
And you'll almost have to stop because you can't go any further.
Yeah.
Because you're just getting tighter and tighter.
Yep.
So then I put the head back. All my deer, I do Y cuts.
Y cuts. Okay. So explain the Y and the 7.
So the Y is when you make that cut down the spine and you start at the back of the head. So from there, then you go straight to the burrs of the antler and it'll make a Y.
Yeah. Coming down and you branch off and you can go to each one and it's all behind them, versus a 7 is like when you go to one, do that one and then cut over and do the other, and then there's like kind of a line on top instead.
Yep, and that's the 7's almost like a burr to burr.
Yeah.
Some taxidermists, if the deer comes into their shop, they'll actually just do a burr to burr and they can extract the head out of that. And you have like no sewing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's kind of hard. I've never messed with it. I
Yeah.
like making my job as easy as possible.
Yeah, and for someone that's got to do one in their lifetime, we should do it the easy way. So do the Y, like stop
The
like 2
Y is the
inches before
easiest,
each
I think.
antler, and then go over to each antler.
The only thing with the or the Y is try to avoid cutting on top of the earbud.
Okay.
So kind of keep that Y still on the head
Yeah.
and not towards the ear.
Yeah.
I've just noticed when I'm putting deer together and I'm trying to sew them up and that cut is kind of over the earbud,
Yeah.
it gets actually pretty difficult to sew back up.
Okay.
I can still do it. It just takes a lot more time.
What is your favorite way for getting the burrs clear? Because that part, I would say that's probably the most frustrating part, where like you feel like you're not making any progress, and it can be dangerous if you're trying to do it with a knife. You're putting a lot of force in, and then also, it breaks 3 and your knife just goes flying, and hopefully you don't have a finger over there.
Yep. So I use a knife to get it.
Yeah.
I use the Outdoor Edge replaceable blade knife just because that will dull a blade super easily.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just hitting bone constantly. I keep the skin, so when I'm peeling my burrs, I'm holding on to that flap of skin.
Yeah.
And I'm like pulling, like it's tight. So when I'm just kind of scraping with my knife, it's pulling it away.
Yeah.
And you can just kind of keep going around. There's a screwdriver method. I've never messed around with it. Well, can't say that I have. I can't do it. I have buddies that can do it.
Yeah. I use the screwdriver. There's always a screwdriver in my truck for that.
Yeah, you can take a flathead screwdriver and peel it right off.
Yeah, it's not much easier like force wise. Like you still have to use a lot of force and pulling. But for me, like I've done the knife thing a couple times, and then like I accidentally like poked through, and I was like, "Whoa!" I almost sliced my finger off, and I put an extra cut in the hide that I didn't want. So then sometimes I go back and forth, like whatever seems to be working the best. But
I guess I always just use my knife and just kind of take my time, keep a lot of pressure on that skin, pulling it, and just cut it away from that burr.
Yeah, once you start making some progress on the burr, it gets easier as you go because you get a better handle to pull on.
Correct.
Yeah, so it's just like go slow, try not to cut any extra, like cut into the hide at all, and just like you're kind of just like filleting like a 1/4 inch at a time for a while. Yeah. But once you get the burrs off, you got next is the ears, right?
Yep. Ears. Well, the ears come before the burrs. You won't be able to get that burr off.
Okay.
Without getting those ears, because you'll be too tight on the side of the head.
Yeah. So what's the best thing to do with the ears?
When I'm just skinning that neck and where it connects to the head connects to the neck, you keep going, you start getting to the ears and the burr. I just go straight through the cartilage, right through the ear butt.
And so one of the things to make sure then, I suppose, is making sure you're as deep as possible so you're not going to like cut into the inner ear fur.
Yep. Yeah, just make sure, you're still close to the skull.
Yeah.
And you'll just cut that cartilage and just kind of keep going.
And it usually smells terrible, especially if you've let it sit for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. Deer never clean their ears out, apparently.
No. They're pretty gross. Mule deer, you'll actually get these little, like late season, you'll get these little bugs inside the ear.
Like mites.
Yeah. There's and you'll find a pile of them.
Yeah. God, that would be annoying to live with.
Yeah. But yeah, you just cut through that cartilage, go to the burrs. Just take your time on the burrs. That is probably the most frustrating part, is getting that burr cleared out.
Yeah.
And then you keep going, you get to the eyes. That's a tricky spot.
Yeah. With the eye. So what I've always done, and so then I'll just explain what I've done and let me know if it's right, is basically I stick my finger in the corner of their eye and pull off the skull, and then as you get close, you'll be able to kind of look at the backside and see that, like, where you're supposed to cut, because you don't want to cut the eyelid off, right? Because that's one of those things that, you know, if you don't do a good job caping and you cut the eyelid off, it like adds hours and hours of work on your end to kind of fix that with clay and paint it back the way it's supposed to be, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's what I do. I stick my finger in there, I peel it back, and I actually peel. So when I stick my finger in, I peel back towards I push my finger towards the burr.
Yeah.
And then I just follow my finger with my knife.
Yeah.
You won't cut, like, subconsciously, you won't cut your finger. You'll just kind of just almost.
Well, if you're going like slow and intentional, right?
Yeah, you're not.
You cut yourself with knives, like hiding deer, when you put too much pressure in, and then your knife breaks free and cuts through and goes flying towards something you weren't expecting it to do, and that's when you actually hit your hand, because you put your hand. Like, I always tell people, like, keep your hand on the south and your knife pointed north.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, always be cutting away from your hand. Sometimes you like, people are like cutting towards their hand and they're using this force, and then it breaks free and you hit yourself in the hand on accident. But yeah, when you're doing like that, you see where your finger is and you just go right underneath it.
Correct. And then, you'll get right through the eye. You won't cut the eyelid. And then, then you get to the tear ducts, and that's another tricky part.
Especially on mule deer and elk.
Yep. What I do is I take the tip of my knife, I stick it.
Hey folks, I've been hunting out of Booner panel blinds by Maverick for years now, and one of my favorite things about the Booner blinds and all of Maverick's hunting blinds is how easy they are to set up. I recently set up 2 new blinds this last season, and I had both blinds set up by myself without any heavy equipment. You can carry each panel of your blind to the top of your platform and set it up by yourself in a single day. The best part about Maverick hunting blinds is that you get the all-weather comfort and scent control benefits of a hard-sided blind at a fraction of the cost. I mean, you can literally get 3 Maverick hunting blinds for the same price as some of the other options on the market, meaning you get triple the options when it comes to picking where you want to hunt, so you can be in the right stand when that big buck walks out this fall. Click the link below and head over to MaverickHunting.com and use the code WesternRookie. That's one word, WesternRookie, to save 10% on your next blind.
In that, your hide's starting to roll up now as you're pushing down the head, and you'll see where that skin goes into the tear duct.
Yeah.
I'll take the tip of my knife and I'll just kind of go in there and I'll just wiggle it around, and you'll start breaking it free.
Yeah.
I mean, I get a lot that the tear ducts are cut.
Because if you gotta be careful. One of the things that my taxidermist told me when I shot that big bull, because I couldn't import it to Minnesota either, is if you're just following like the shape of the nose down with your knife, like your knife's parallel to the nose, you're gonna go right across that tear duct and cut it off.
Correct.
And he's like, you can pull on that tear duct as hard as you want, and you're not gonna rip it, but you will cut right through it if you don't. Like, so you got to see it coming, and you got to be looking. To me, it was like almost like you got to be looking for where that bone goes into a hole, and you got to follow that edge with the tip of your knife and go back in and like kind of scrape.
And they go away. Them mule deer and elk, they go back there a ways.
An elk will like dang near make your pinky finger disappear. Like, it's crazy.
Because I think it's like 1.5 inches.
And it's full of gunk. It's always full of crud.
Yep. And you'll just get your tip of your knife in there and kind of wiggle it around. You'll start breaking it free. Once you start breaking it free, you can actually put your finger in the tear duct and start pulling it and do basically what you did with the eye.
Yeah.
And just
pull it away.
Pull it right away. After the tear duct, I mean, you already got your mouth and your nose done. So you just follow that bridge of that nose down, and you have it completely caped off the skull.
One of the things that I noticed, I remember too, I've done it a few times for practice and just for Euros, is that the corner of the mouth, sometimes it's easy to come in a little too high. Like the corner of the jaw goes way back in there.
Yep.
And it just like be careful on that spot as well. Because you can come in a little too high and risk cutting off a little bit of the corner of the mouth that you'd want to save.
Yep. Yeah. I always just, when I do my mouth, I go to the corner of my mouth and then that's when I stop.
Yeah.
Because it's actually a lot easier.
When you do that first.
When you do it first, yeah. You do it first, you go to the corner of the mouth, and then you can go back down.
Yeah.
That way you know where you'll just be cutting and all of a sudden you'll have a hole there.
Yeah.
And you know that's where you stop.
Yeah, and you can find that hole. And so that works. And so that would be, caping off the face is really the same whether you do the gutless method or whether you do the, farmstead, gut method, right? The only difference is leading up to that point. I'd say the gutless method, that's when you're doing the spine cut because you're not cutting the guts. And then, since whether you have a line going down the top, like we talked about, and doing the Y, or you gutted it and now you're going to do like the brown white line method up both legs and follow that white and brown line back. Yep. So one of the things that, some people be like, oh, I'm going to cut in the white because it's thinner and it's, you don't need that white. But that's actually not quite right? Because if you do need that white, it's incredibly hard to hide that cut line because that fur is so thin.
In that white armpit area.
Yeah.
To sew that up and hide that stitch is pretty difficult.
So you want to be right on the brown line.
Yep. Correct.
Awesome.
And a lot of people, they think like you don't need all that, down there, that armpit, the full brisket.
Yeah.
All that. And I'm like, if you actually think about it, they call it a shoulder mount for a reason.
Yeah.
You got the full shoulders.
Well, shoulder mounts used to, like, if you go to old bars and see, like, ancient shoulder mounts, it's just the neck.
Yep.
And nowadays, these mounts are, like, a lot of them are, and a lot of the really good ones are showing off, like, the full blade. Like, they're wall pedestals or true pedestals, and they're showing off, like, half the blade. I know both of my elk are kind of like that.
Yeah. My antelope's a pedestal. I took my antelope from a half life-size form, made it into a pedestal with extended legs.
Yeah.
You're getting a lot more creative form ideas now.
Yeah.
And that's why I tell people, half the body, cut it at the knees, because now you can do whatever you want.
Yeah. If someone wants to do a full body mount, what's the best way to do that?
We talking deer or
cat, or like deer or predator, I suppose. But like,
okay, most of my predators, they come in whole.
Yeah. And would that be for a deer, like if you want it, like if you shoot a 400-inch, well, that's not going to be realistic. You shoot a 200-inch whitetail and you're like, I want a full body mount, is the best thing to just figure out a way to get your whole deer to the taxidermist? Like right away, cape it with him and then take it. Yeah.
I think I would just cape it out for him.
Yeah.
Or skin it out. If it's not, like, if that's not going to work, basically, I did my life size. I have a life size deer mounted in my shop. What I did was I had him on the back of the tailgate of my pickup, and I first did the back legs.
Okay.
So I just followed that white and brown line up to the legs, and I got to about the ankle, and I just cut that with a sawzall.
To leave like the hoof in, like you just left the hoof in place.
And then I peeled all that back, and then you get to that. I did that on both legs and got to the tendon where you can actually hang them up.
Yeah.
And then I just skinned them straight out.
Okay. Skin them straight out. Make sure that like you're making nice straight lines, whether you're going down the gut line or the back spine, and then just do the same thing on the front legs. I suppose is follow the white brown line down to the ankle, and then just cut the bone off and leave the hoof in.
And then I can do all the foot stuff. I can get that bone out.
Yeah.
And all that meat. That was actually pretty simple.
Okay.
It was kind of annoying just doing the feet on the tailgate and then raising them up on the hoist.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it still worked.
When it comes to doing like a Euro mount or a plaque mount, is there anything people should keep in mind? One question I have is like our home taxidermist, if it's a big mature deer, like a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, and you want a plaque mount or a Euro mount, he will buy the hide from you if you cape it the right way. So it's almost, so is that something just to keep in mind? Like if it's a small deer versus like you can just do whatever. If it's a large deer, do this.
I don't know how many capes I buy a year now. I have boxes full of just spare capes, but I give credit towards a Euro for that cape if it's caped out good, and it's a cape that I think I'm going to use. If it's not just a little basket 3x3, I'm not going to. I won't buy it.
Right.
Because
it's basically got to be like a 3-year-old or older. Like it's got to be a mature enough buck that it's got a thick enough neck that someone will use it.
Correct.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one thing for people to keep in mind is most taxidermists will buy that cape off of you.
Yeah. I know a lot of people are like, just cut it off like straight because they're just doing a horn mount or they're doing a Euro mount. I'm like, well, you could have used that cape.
Yep.
Yeah.
Heck, most of my competition deer replacement capes that I buy off of other guys, and I just put a different set of horns on it.
Really?
Yeah. My world championship piece, that was a buddy's girlfriend's cape on my girlfriend's horns.
That's funny.
It's like I just go in my box and find a good cape.
Yeah, because you want the best cape, like the best, because at that point you're also looking at like fur quality and colors and
color. I have one in there right now. I have competition quality written on it. The only reason I didn't pick it for Worlds was it had a little hole right below the white patch.
Oh.
And I mean, I can sew it, but I was like, I'm not even going to use that one.
Yeah, this like a bullet hole?
No, it was probably me fleshing it.
Oh, okay.
When I was fleshing, I nicked it a little bit, made a little hole.
Okay.
But you get back to Euros. Most of my Euros, I skin the head out.
Okay.
I do get a few in that I don't have to skin. What I do with my Euros is I split them straight down the center of the face.
All the way to the nose.
Yeah, right down the bridge of the nose.
Yeah. So if you're doing a Euro, you know you're doing a Euro, and you're gonna cape it yourself because you're out of state or something. Like that's one thing you can do, just make it a little easier.
Yep, and you're not gonna save the cape.
Right. And if you don't want to save the cape, some people don't care. They're like, I'm not spending the time. I'm here in camp. I'm just doing it as fast as possible. We're gonna hit the road as soon as I'm done with this. Yeah.
Yep. And you really don't have to be that careful with a Euro. Only thing I would advise people not to do is really scrape your knife blade on that skull.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because then you're going to get the finished product and you're going to see knife marks.
Yeah.
You'll see really faint scrape marks from the blade of your knife.
Yeah.
On the skull.
Yeah, you don't want those. So you want to just like go slow and try not to be hitting the bone. Like follow the bone, not go into the bone.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's the only thing on Euros that I would really advise people not to do.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. Well, one of the things I wanted to ask you is about velvet. So, we've talked about it in the past, but just to bring it up again, right now we're in the kind of the early season. Velvet's probably going to be peeling, but for future years, like, what's the best strategy for velvet if you want to? If you shoot a velvet deer and you want to do any amount of velvet taxidermy, like, what are the options and like what's the best one?
I mean, I had these calls even before our archery season opened. Guys were calling,
Yeah.
Just asking tips. And again, that velvet is just like the cape, just like the meat, like treat it the same.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it cool, dry. Like if you put it in your cooler, you don't want your cooler ice completely melted and it's just like a pool in there.
And it's going to be probably pretty hard to actually put your velvet in a cooler.
Yeah.
Because it's not, like, your antlers aren't going to fit.
No, unless someone has a giant cooler.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep it cool and dry, like as dry as possible. And then I tell people, like, I don't know, like North Dakota has those sticker tags.
Yep.
Where you peel them back. I tell people not to stick the tag on the horns.
Right.
You peel it back, like there's the backing on that sticker. Just peel it back 2 inches on each ends, cut that flap of paper off with your knife, and stick the sticky sides together.
Right.
Around the
so
horn.
It's loose around the horn.
Yeah, that way the glue's not touching that velvet. If the glue touches that velvet, it's pretty hard to get off without ripping it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then how long do people have with a velvet deer to get it to a taxidermist before the velvet starts to fall off?
Oh, I tell people under 24 hours.
Under 24 hours, they should be safe?
I don't know what the actual timeline is. I just tell people because I think that's a really safe.
You haven't had one that didn't turn out yet if people got it to you that fast?
Correct.
Okay.
Because, I mean, I checked in a velvet whitetail last week Friday. Or was it Friday? Yeah, it was Friday. He shot it Thursday night, and it was here Friday morning.
Yeah, and then you get it in the cooler.
And as soon as he came in, I used Velvelock.
Yep.
I live by the stuff. Never had one slip. And I mean, I didn't even start filling out paperwork yet, and I started spraying it.
Okay.
And I spray it, and then we fill out paperwork.
Is one application of Velvelock, if you do it right, all you need?
That's what they say on the bottle. They say one bottle is good for 180 inches.
Yeah.
I sprayed mine twice,
and
if not even 3 times.
Once you spray them, do you have to keep them cool then? Because it says on the bottle that it works through heat, right?
Well, I guess I just keep mine in my shop. I don't put them in my cooler.
Yeah. I think because I bought the bottle this year and it said like keep it warm. Like the Velvelock stuff does not work if you cool it.
Yeah, it's probably saying like don't put it
don't put it in the cooler until it's dried off and stuff.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I just spray mine and I let them sit just out in the open of the shop.
Yeah. So anyone can do that. I bought some for our Nebraska hunt because there's a good chance we could shoot velvet bucks. I bought a bottle of it. Obviously didn't need it. The hunt didn't go that great. But yeah, so I mean, that's something that anyone can do. I don't know what the
life of that stuff is either.
Well, I never opened it, so hopefully.
Yeah. I assume it would still work year after year.
I hope so. It's not that expensive though.
No, I think it was like
$30? Yeah, $30 to buy a bottle of it, and so I rolled the dice, and we'll see. Because what I've always been worried about, like you're on let's say like this was a 10-day hunt. I don't really want to bring it to a Nebraska taxidermist that I've never worked with before. Like I want to bring it to someone I've worked with.
Correct.
And so it could be like a week if I shoot it first night before we leave. And so I was like, well, I got to bring it with me then so I can use it and protect it there. because I wanted to ask you, like, so the flip side, like, if you don't, like, if your buck wrecks his velvet when he dives, if it's starting to peel off, if you don't take care of it fast enough and it starts to slip, I've heard it's incredibly expensive to do replacement velvet.
Yep. If you want it done good, it's incredibly expensive.
What, like, ballpark it for, like, your average shoulder, like
Yes,
your average buck?
I guess I've never done one. I want to say it's 300.
Oh, okay, so 50 to 100% it'll add to your costs, probably.
Yeah.
Depending on how big your animal is.
Yeah. That's what I want to say. If you set, like, I know I had back in high school before I was doing taxidermy, I had a buddy shoot a giant velvet whitetail, and he put fake velvet on it, and that taxidermist sent it away. Like, he didn't do it himself.
Yeah, probably not something most taxidermists would do themselves.
And
Like-
I want to say it was right around that ballpark. I mean, that was
10 years ago.
10 years ago.
So probably double by now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's products I can get that I can do fake velvet. Fake velvet, I'll tell you right now, it doesn't look good.
Unless you get the best stuff.
Even the best stuff.
Oh,
It
really?
doesn't. It doesn't
Okay.
look real.
So then that's where it's like worth it if you have an opportunity to spend $30 on the Velvelock bottle. If you're hunting far away from your taxidermist, if you're hunting, like, if you shoot velvet out of your home, spot, and your taxidermist is 30 minutes away, probably not that big of a deal. But
Correct.
yeah,
And like I guess when I know I'm have a chance of getting velvet deer in,
yeah,
these first 2 weeks of season is the best opportunity for us to get velvet deer. I don't leave town.
yeah, because you want to be here right away to spray
I
them.
just want to make sure I'm here.
Yeah,
Like, I just don't leave town for 2 weeks. Or I stay somewhat close. So,
close
like,
enough to meet somebody.
yeah, last Saturday, I went an hour south just to go shoot doves with a buddy.
Yeah,
Still, that's close enough that I can, and it's doves, it don't matter. Like, if I get a call for a velvet deer, my buddy
Right.
down there will be like, okay, let's pack up, let's go.
yeah, or you'll go and he can stay or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah, and I'll just race back up here.
yeah, that makes sense.
But like, I won't actually go. Like, I didn't bow hunt these 2 weeks just because I'll be in the I would have been in the Badlands with no service.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. You can always have like a lockbox out front with Velvelock in it and be like, if you shoot a velvet buck, like,
Here you go.
here's the combination.
I have my lockbox out back.
Yeah.
But now that I'm full time, I guess not many people need to use it.
Yeah, because you're available. You are
Yeah.
available. One thing I forgot to ask when we're talking about like caping, and if you mess up a cape, what do you charge someone to? Because like if you mess up a cape and you come in and be like, hey, I want to shoulder mount my deer, and you're like, hey, I can't use this cape. Like we have to talk
if
about
they're too
options.
short or
Whatever. They gutted it all the way up to the chin, the whiskers,
yep.
right? And it's like, I can't use this. There's options, but like you're not doing it out of your pocket. So
Yeah,
like
correct.
what is, just to give people a ballpark of how important it is, like what are you charging for a replacement cape? Assuming it's a mature buck, like a 4 or 5 year old buck, if that's harder to get those capes, because a lot of people that shoot those do shoulder mount them. So it's harder to buy the spares. Like, what do you charge?
What's like? So what I charge for a replacement cape on a deer is $125.
Yeah.
Like, that. So you got your, deer $750. Yeah, $125 onto that $750.
Yeah, you're getting $875, $900, tax, whatever. To put it in perspective, like for a lot of people, that's like 4 hours of work, roughly. And it's not going to take you 4 hours to slow down and do a good job. Especially if you're not caping off the face. If you're just gutting it, it's like maybe 15 extra minutes to like slow down, do it the little bit harder way, don't quite as far, peel it a little bit more than you cut it, and it's going to save you $125. And I'd say that's probably average. I know like my taxidermist back home in Minnesota is right around that. Like if you have to buy a cape, it's right about there for a deer. I mean, that's
for deer.
Everything changes. It's relative, right? Yeah, but elk, it's probably going to be, 2, 3, 4 times more because it's harder to buy replacement capes and they're bigger. And
what's funny is I have a pile of elk capes right now.
That's funny because
every guy I've done a Euro on, I've bought the cape off of.
Yeah. So do you get a lot of other taxidermists like networking and asking like, hey, do you have any spare capes that
Yeah, I got to ship off. I packed up an antelope that has to go to Ohio today.
Because someone messed up their cape.
I don't know if it was that or if he just wants to mount an antelope or.
Okay. Well, if someone brought their antelope back from Wyoming to Ohio and they didn't take like absolute perfect care of it, it's gonna slip.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's a good one. Let's talk about antelope real quick. How do you recommend caping an antelope so it doesn't slip? Because those suckers will slip no matter what.
Their hair is so delicate. Heck, I got my antelope here, and if I brush it, I get a couple hairs that still fall out.
Yeah.
And it's fully tan. It's been mounted for 10 months now.
Yeah.
Yeah, those things just, I don't know, their hair falls out super easily. Cape them just like a deer. They are smaller, so you could put them in your cooler, which is nice.
Yeah.
What I tell people is roll them up so the hair's outside. Roll them up, double bag them, because that'll keep them dry if you put them in the cooler. So double bag them, put them in the cooler, and I almost tell people it's just like velvet. Get them here ASAP.
Yeah. Get them to a taxidermist or someplace you can get them in a cooler or a freezer.
Correct.
Yeah. Some people we bring freezers out with us when we elk hunt just to keep everything a better chance of keeping it cold. But yeah, don't drag them. Don't drag them at all. Like don't drag them to don't drag them 5 feet to a flatter spot. Like if you drag them at all, their hair's gone.
I even tell people that with deer too. That's a good point. If you can avoid dragging a deer, avoid dragging a deer.
Well, I think it also depends on where you are. Like back home in Minnesota, we can drag deer all we want because it's like I think the grass is different and it's November. We have thick, at that time of the year it's thick fir, snow, wet grass, like soft grass versus out west where it's rock, sagebrush, like a bunch of like hard things, earlier season, thinner hides. Yeah, don't be dragging your deer at all.
No.
Yeah, if you can help it at all.
Yeah, I still tell people, try to avoid it. Still, no matter where you're at.
Yeah.
Even with your dragging on soft stuff, there's still a chance of, there could be a rock under that snow.
It's just so wet. Like, there's no rocks. So we've always... And we don't drag them any farther than we have to. We pull in the Ranger and put them in the Ranger.
Yeah.
If we can drive right up to them, we'll drive right up to them. But usually they die in some thick stuff. We have to get them out of that a little bit.
Yeah. That's a good point with antelope. Yeah, don't drag those things.
Don't even you have to be very, very careful rolling them over. You have to be very, very careful. Like when I skin deer, I'm usually pulling more than I'm cutting. And I think a lot of people will resonate with that. Like especially a warm deer, you can basically pull the hide off. You don't have to cut the hide off. With an antelope, you can't pull more than you cut. Like you can maybe put just enough tension on to keep the hide tight, and then cut. Or when you get enough, grab it from the inside.
Correct. That's what I was gonna say. Is grab it from the inside. Don't grab it from the hair. That hair is just gonna pull it right out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my antelope, I shot him 8 to 1,000 yards away from the pickup. with my bow.
Yeah.
And I had a couple buddies come down, even though they didn't need to help me. They wanted to get like good pictures, whatnot, and kind of help me get them out, which they're not that big. I mean, I tossed that entire goat over my shoulders ungutted.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying I'm Superman, but
Yeah. And
Not
you're
that
not a big
big.
person. I mean,
No.
people don't know this, but like you're not a big person by any means.
no, I mean, they're not big. You
Yeah.
toss them over your shoulders, you don't have to drag. I didn't have to quarter in the field. I brought them back to my shop, and I skinned them out and deboned them ungutted in my shop.
Yeah. That'd be nice. I've thought it like if you have two people or even one person, but you can be like really careful and lift it up and put it in like a deer cart or a game cart.
Mm-hmm.
That could probably work too. You just gotta be careful that you're not like, because I feel like even if you're bouncing it around and it's shaking a little bit, it could be losing.
It's rubbing.
Yeah. So you gotta be kind of careful on that. But yeah, the antelope are tricky. I think we're gonna be Euroing our antelope that we shoot this year in Wyoming anyway, because we're running out of wall space. Unless I shoot like a true booner, but I doubt I'll shoot a booner.
Do pedestal.
Well, that's still with fur, right?
Yeah.
It's still kind of, pedestals don't take up wall space, but they take
They
up
take up floor space.
next to the wall,
Correct.
which is still wall space.
Yeah.
The elk, it's just one of those things where it's like we got to be kind of careful of like we can't shoulder mount everything anymore because we're starting to fill up the house. So,
Yeah.
and my wife loves Euro mounts, so we'll probably just do Euros.
An antelope Euro mounts, they do look really good.
Yeah.
That black contrasts that white skull, and
Yeah.
they look super sharp.
Yeah. No, they do. So, well, awesome, man. Yeah, kind of covered all the bases there on what to do, what not to do with your taxidermy care. Heading into seasons, I think more and more animals are going to hit the ground as we move on, get closer to the fall, the rut, colder temps, and so good little refresher course for anyone that's headed out this fall looking to do some taxidermy work.
Correct.
Yeah. Take care of your game. Take care of your
Yep.
memories. Is
Treat
really
that
what we should
cape-
say.
Like I say, treat that cape just like you would the meat.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe even a touch more so. Like
Yeah.
everyone's got their meat system down. But like if you're gonna shoulder mount it, take that extra minute, take that extra step, hunt antelope with ice in your cooler, have a plan to how are we gonna cool this off fast. If you're spike camping, like you might want a big Yeti in your truck full of ice. So that way when you get back you can be putting it on something cold right away.
Yep.
If you're hunting out of your shop, back 40 behind the house, probably not that big a deal, but
No.
have something ready to go to how you're going to keep those animals cold.
Yep. And then basically just get it to us as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Don't want to have it sitting in the garage then
Right.
once you get home.
Yeah, it's all situational. If it's December 31st, you can get away with,
A little
get
bit
away
of
with murder. You can, if it's below freezing outside, you can leave your cape outside for a while.
I get that a lot. About every March, April, I'll check in about 10 more euros.
Because people cut the head off and left it on the side of the shop all winter.
Yep, or right by the shed or the side of the garage, and
Which is
It's
gross
like-
for you. That's disgusting.
it starts warming up, and their
Yeah.
wife probably starts complaining, and
Yeah.
then they remember about it because it starts stinking, and then it rolls into the shop.
And then you have to wear a gas mask.
Yeah, they are pretty nasty once it comes that time.
I'm to the point now where, like, if I do my own Euros, I'm skinning them, like, same day. Like, don't wait. I've waited, like, a week before, and it still gets gross.
Yeah, that skin dries onto that skull, and it's a pain to get off.
And then it smells worse as well while you're doing it.
Yep.
So it's harder, it takes longer, and it smells worse. So it's like, I'm just doing them right away from now on.
Correct.
So, awesome. Well, we'll definitely put the links to some of the places that you are online. Give folks a chance, though, real quick before we end this podcast. Where can they find you? If they're in the area, where can they look up the website and get in touch with you to drop off a trophy this fall? And where can they just follow more of your stuff?
Yeah, I mean, basically, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, just at Northwind Taxidermy.
Yep.
I've been getting into the live videos every Tuesday.
Nice.
I haven't done one for a couple weeks. Just in my live videos, you'll just be seeing me mount stuff.
Yeah.
Just stuff I'm doing in the shop. You can ask questions there. Always feel free to shoot me a text or call me
Yeah.
for like any questions that you have, even if it's before your hunt. Shoot me a text or call, and I can answer most of your questions.
Yeah. Awesome. We'll put the links in there. Feel free to reach out. If you're in the area, easy to drop stuff off. If you're not, it seems like you travel enough that if you can keep things cold long enough.
Too much.
Like we met up and exchanged an elk twice, and it was like
Yep.
on your own travel plans. Like you didn't even have to go out of your way. So
No, I travel a ton.
yeah,
I feel like I'm always on the road.
yeah. If you're somewhere on the I-94 corridor between like western Montana and eastern Minnesota, there's a good chance you
that I'm
can meet
coming
up.
through.
Yeah, you're
I'm
coming
even
through.
starting to go into South Dakota now.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks for being here, Reece. Thanks for kind of walking the guests through how they can get the most out of their memories and be ready for when that big buck hits the dirt in front of them this fall.
Sounds good.
Awesome. And thank you for listening.